Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Property Lifestyle Mastery. We're talking about the 3 different pillars that you have to master to truly get freedom: mindset, productivity and strategy. And today we're going deep into strategy and what it means for you in your property business. So Dave and I today, we are talking about deals and investors and bringing the 2 of these together. And I really enjoyed recording this episode with Dave. It was more of him interviewing me, but in a way that I haven't been asked those questions before. So it's a very different perspective on anything that I've ever really put out there before about that phase of our growth. So we're talking about what comes first, the deals, or the investors, the chicken or the egg, and yeah, it's really the story that we've never told about that very early phase of our property journey. So you're really going to love this. So Detail Dave, it's me and you today. Let's do this.
Hello there.
And a warm welcome from Lake Como, or a lake near Lake Como. I don't know what the name of this lake is.
No idea.
But lovely sunny afternoon and a good moment to sit and talk about deals and investors. So this week we're in the business strategy area of the Property Lifestyle Mastery framework, and we're thinking about what are the different component parts that you've got to get in place to make sure that you can have deals and investors consistently. And there's lots of stuff underneath all of this, so we're going to start to break it apart, and there'll be subsequent episodes too, but I think this is sort of more like the big picture concept behind how you have a strategy behind investors and deals in order to grow your business and in order to take a step towards the centre, which is about having freedom. So setting up those parts of the business strategy in a way that gives you freedom.
Gives you time freedom, I guess.
Yeah, and financial freedom.
And financial freedom, yeah. So I was thinking, really, to bring this into context, we should start from the beginning.
Great plan. It's a very good place to start.
If we go back to, 9-10 years ago, when we were first getting into property, and look at how we started approaching our deals and investors, and then look at the evolution over time, because it's obviously changed so much, and where we started is so different to where we are now, and I think that would be really interesting to hear that journey, actually, and hear what changed and why. So why don't we start there?
So I start at the very
beginning.
beginning.
Let's go to day one. What happened? What was it like?
Day one of what? Looking for deals?
Let's go day one for looking for deals.
Well, I think the thing is, before even looking for deals, actually maybe I shouldn't go there. Day one for looking for deals was I couldn't get a mortgage, so that was like, let's go past that
Jump
part.
beyond that, come on.
So day one looking for deals was trying to find an area that would work, and I didn't really have a lot of a concept around what types of properties I was looking for, apart from cheap ones, because that's all I could afford. And I started looking initially on close to where we lived, which was like Woolwich, Thamesmead, Abbey Wood, Belvedere, Erith, and it got further and further out from there.
It's all southeast London.
All southeast London, all the way until I'd gone so far through Kent that I was basically in Dover, and various different waypoints along the way, looking at properties, trying to analyse them, figure out if they worked or not. Like, it was those first days of like writing down numbers on a pad and paper and trying to analyse them, and like, this isn't very good, think I need a spreadsheet for this, and then you start the spreadsheet, and then 10 years later that spreadsheet is amazing. But it was the first bare bones of that, and trying to figure out, did it actually work? What would I need to do to make sure it worked? And yeah, it was very inefficient, very time consuming, and I was working full time in central London, so we're trying to identify properties on Rightmove or online, trying to book in viewings and make time for those viewings like in the evenings or at weekends.
Where was I during all of this?
You were being very supportive in the background. And to be fair, I think you did sometimes come to viewings with me, if there was a day that you weren't being a musician, you would come and we'd do the viewings together. I remember we'd go around in the car, we'd try and pack them all in on a Saturday and do 10 viewings all in one day, and then between viewings we'd be trying to remember what we saw and being did that one have 2 bedrooms or 1 bedroom, Dave, do you remember? And you're like, oh, I didn't write that part down, I think it was 2, maybe it was 3, and then trying to be oh, and how much was it on for, how much is it worth? I don't actually think it's worth, Jackie. I don't really know, maybe, how are we going to figure that out? And just all what seems like quite a simple thing at first, suddenly there's so many unanswered questions. So you were dipping in and out, but I was driving it.
Great. And I would clarify that our very first property we were buying with our own cash, so we didn't have to worry about investors at this point.
No.
But from the second one onwards, we were working with investor finance.
Yep.
So that already became a kind of thing, and we were still acting in the way you're saying, but that became a thing from the second property onwards.
It did, and I was trying to actually raise finance, even at the first property. Do you remember? I was talking to your brother.
Yes.
And I was trying to figure out, like, this idea. I'd kind of read in a few books, people were working with investors, and I was like, no one was really explaining how that process actually worked. And so I was kind of trying to figure out what I would do, and I found my very first JV proposition, which I put through to your brother, like, when we were clearing stuff out a few years ago. And my gosh, I proposed to him a fantastic deal that he didn't say yes to.
He said no.
I have to find that of him at
What
some
an
point.
idiot.
Like, Mike, you should have said yes to this. Maybe you're listening, Mike. Hi, brother Robert, listening in as well. Hi, guys. It was unfairly weighted in terms of what I was giving away. But yeah, it was just fumbling through with no real concept apart from, like, got to find money to do deals. I probably wouldn't even said deals, buy a property.
So then that's the very beginning. That's where we started. Now, let's look back just with a bit of hindsight and experience, and also having worked with a lot of clients who are, just out of that phase, really, just out of the early stages into the kind of real driving at it, but still similar mindset. What would you say, looking back, were the biggest weaknesses to what you were doing? I keep saying you, because to be honest with you, at this point, I wasn't really involved in the business that much.
Yeah, I mean, it was crap without you, wasn't it?
I
That
know.
was really what I was doing wrong.
Biggest weakness, didn't
Lack
have
of
Dave.
Dave. Everyone needs more Dave in their life. So, my biggest weakness at that point was I didn't have a concept for what a deal actually was.
And what did that mean?
It meant that when I was trying to analyse something, I didn't know what a good end result really was. I wasn't looking at it in terms of, like, a return on capital. I was just looking at how can I buy a property that makes some money each month that I can afford for the amount of savings that I've managed to put aside.
Or what investor?
Well, there was no, at the very beginning, there was no
True.
investor. So yeah, it was just like, do I have enough money for the deposit? Can I get a mortgage to cover the rest? Do I think it's going to make me a surplus money every month? And do I think I'm buying it to mean that I've got a bit of value created from doing the refurb? I mean, I had actually quite a few ideas there.
Yeah.
More than I often see with others. But it was woolly. It was
Woolly?
very woolly.
I guess and confusing, because when you're doing that and you're assessing loads of deals, because you're just looking at all sorts. Every single time you're having to reinvent the wheel. You're looking at going, is this good enough? Am I happy with that? I'm not sure. I guess the moment it starts to condense into something a little clearer is the moment you stop working with your own money and you start having to work with investor money, right? Because
Yes.
now you've got to actually
Make sure it's valuable to someone else as well.
Yeah.
But you should do it on your own money as well.
You
Like,
should.
why are you treating your money worse than other people's money? Like, it's so funny, we treat other people's money better than ours. But I've just realised when you were saying all of that, oh God, it's gone. It was a really good point.
It'll come back, don't worry. So we got started to work with investors, and at that point you suddenly have to get clearer on what makes a deal, right? And I think that's really it, really. What is a deal to you?
Yes.
Carry on, tell me what it was you remembered.
So I think the thing that I found confusing at that point was everyone was saying it's better if you're going to do buy-to-lets, which is what all I really knew at that point anyway in property. You've got to go up north. That's where the yields are best. And so, but something inside me didn't feel that was the right decision. And something for me about Southeast London and London was drawing me, and I'm like, this is a good place to invest. Like, if I go up north, I think it maybe has shifted a bit in the last 10 years, but at that point I was like, if I go up north, I genuinely don't think my capital appreciation potential on this property is going to be as good as if I invest in the southeast. So if I just do what everyone else is telling me, I feel like I'm missing an opportunity. And I think that was gave me a lot of confusion, was how far do I have to get from London to be within the ballpark of what these up north, where that invisible line is, up north people are saying is good. And that actually meant that I went on this whole wild goose chase actually, because I ended up, starting from like southeast London where we were already on the edge anyway, maybe like zone 4, working through the different zones outwards southeast London, then getting into Kent, which was like then Gravesend, Sittingbourne, blah blah blah, all these different towns in Kent, I can't even think of them now, all the way out to Dover. And I only did that because I was not confident to follow my own inner guidance that was like, it's not just about it's not just about cash flow, it's about capital appreciation too. And the other thing that in hindsight I look back on is that when I was first looking, I found properties in Erith that were like on for like 80 grand. And by the time I actually had the mortgage and the funds in place, they were like 100 grand. And I was like, damn it, I've missed it. I've missed the boat. So that was then also fueled that wild goose chase.
Right, you completely ignored them.
I ignored them. I was like, it's not a good deal anymore.
They've gone up already.
Yeah, bad deal.
I missed it.
So, and then I went all the way out to Dover before then eventually, like, somehow maybe I was building my confidence during this time, and eventually came back and I was like, no, Erith is good. Just because it's like 100 grand is still good. Like, this is, like, if I compare this to go a bit further in southeast London, that's a bargain for inside the M25 still, and I was going to make a few £100 cash flow, and that area had like regeneration and Crossrail and stuff coming in. So like when you put it all together, I was like, this is the dream team proposition. It's not just about buying BMV in a cheap area, it's about getting a property that has good medium term potential to go up in value, in relationship to like being close to good stations, other regeneration happening, but not obvious. Like Woolwich was going up in value a lot because of Crossrail, so was Abbey Wood. So the ripples from those was where I was looking, because no one else was really thinking about it. So they were still cheap, yields were still decent, and capital appreciation was still good. So in the end, after about, I don't know how many months, 9 months maybe of searching, I was like, no, Jackie, you were right in the first place. Just go and buy one of those Erith ones, which I did for £108,500, and it revalued at 125, which I was devastated about because that was a £5 grand down, no, £7.5 grand down val from what I thought. Do you remember me crying about that?
132,500
That was
your
a fair figure, Mr. Valuer. So anyway, and I spent 7-ish grand on the refurb, so it was good.
Good deal.
Yeah.
And actually that starts the moment at which we were able to say, great, and we were lucky in this respect, right? Or at this point you were lucky. I was just on the sidelines. You were lucky that, not lucky, you'd spent 18 months getting to this point of having a deal that was a deal, and it was a good deal, and it had a lot of great potential within it in terms of both the good cash flow, good capital appreciation, and you'd been through this journey to get to this point. Then we've approached investors. Which in our case was family.
Yep.
It was my family was our first investors, which is, we're still, I love working with my family. They're still great investors, and it's been such a joy actually to work with them and bring what we do and all the knowledge we've learned to the people who are closest to us and help them to have a better future. So, I just think that's been amazing.
It has. And
then to be able to then approach them and say, what we've done has been a great deal and we want to do more of this.
Yes.
And it was just, I say lucky because there was no strategic planning to that.
It was a strategic accident.
It was strategic
what
accident.
One of our mentors would have said.
We said, we realised we had something good, so we just went to them and said, we'll do more of these. And just because of who we are, we didn't want to make it seem woolly when we spoke to them. So we therefore limited ourselves and said, therefore, this is the deal we will do.
At that point, we didn't realise we were limiting ourselves.
No.
At that point, we didn't really know what else the options were. So it's like, well, you do more buy-to-lets, right? Let's just do more buy-to-lets. And here's a buy-to-let that we did, and here's how it went. So it was like the kid in the sweet shop analogy. The problem is there are so many sweets to choose from, so it just gets all confusing. But if you go into your home cupboard as a kid, you maybe got 2 sweets in there. Okay, I've got to go with that one.
Yeah. And that was us. We had one suite really.
One suite.
That we were happy with, which was 1-bed flats. And we actually made that decision. And that's the strategic accident for us that allowed very quick scale, very quick growth. Because over the next 12 months, we just, as soon as the family were on board, the investors were on board, we went out and bought 7 more.
Yeah. In
the next 12 months. And that's the part that I think was the strategic accident. Is now when we look back and everything that stemmed from that come all of our methods that have come out of that do stem back to saying, well, if you want to grow fast, find one thing that's great and do loads of it.
And the genius of it was like we had figured it all out with that one. okay, it had not gone perfectly. We'd had some devastating window situations, some devastating, they felt devastating at the time, water pump situation. You know, it hadn't been easy, but we basically was pretty confident that we could just do it again. Like, you know, we kind of know about windows now, we know about what kitchen, we know about what bathroom, we know what carpet is the best value. Like, we just tick, 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 we know all this stuff, we know how much the end values are, how much it rents for, it's rent for more than we thought. It's like, okay, cool. So I don't need really much more knowledge. The structuring JVs was different, but don't need much more knowledge to just go and do this. And so what most people do at that point that I see, it's like, okay, well, I've done that now, done a buy-to-let, and we kind of did it a bit, which we come back to. Done that now, right, it's definitely time for the next thing. Like, what's the next thing? Yeah. And if you do that, and maybe we should talk about the Brigstock, because like that was we started then hearing about other strategies at this point, right? Strategies, and HMOs was one of them, and we did start to do this thing of, oh, that looks better. You know, 300 quid compared to £1,000 cash flow. Ooh.
Yep.
Why not do the £1,000 one? Which we then subsequently did get distracted. We did go out and buy a HMO, and then when you look at the HMO's performance compared to those single lets performed better for us.
Yes, they did. And we didn't do a bad job on it either, actually. When I look back now, looking at all of our clients do HMOs, and because we don't do them, we made a choice not to. And I look at how much it costs and everything. I think, wow, I know it was a long time ago, but we actually managed to convert that place for a very little amount of money. And we did get it filled with good rent, and it was good margins. But what we've decided that we don't like about that strategy is just that we didn't enjoy trying to fill it, and we've had problems filling it, and it's just been a bit of a non-enjoyable side that we decided we didn't want to put the effort into.
The problem is, it's like, I actually wouldn't have a problem with solving that, but there's no point in us putting loads of energy into solving that when it's not the main thing that you're doing. Yeah. So yeah, that distraction kind of started, but it just basically meant that by replicating the same thing that we'd already done very quickly, it was in a matter of months that we'd secured these, like, I can't remember the exact numbers and the exact flow, but it was like 5, 6, 7 deals, as you say, in a
deal
matter
a
of
month.
months. Yeah.
Deal a month.
I remember putting it on Facebook. I was updating, like, oh, bought my first investment property, and I had all the updates about how long it had taken. And then I was like, oh, agreed another one, deal number 3, deal number 4, deal number 5. People were like, what is happening to this girl? Like, she's just laboured for like 18 months for one. How is all this happening? And it meant that we were able to get some of our friends came in and helped us. Like, we paid them to do some of the overseeing of the refurb and to help dressing them. We knew what our refurb spec was, so we were able to give that same spec and get multiple builders in. And it just, like, we didn't have to be involved in all of it, and we were confident to replicate it all very quickly because we'd already done it.
Yeah.
Which, the minute you do something new, you've got to go through the process to just, like, check it first.
So that brings me to strategy, because I think around this time we started to do our very first strategy. We started to actually write down on a sheet of paper what it was we were trying to achieve and the plan to get there.
Yes.
So just give us a bit of a description about how that first strategy within the deals and investor side would have looked when we were first, and this is from the perspective that when we first got into this, we were doing pure business strategy without any guidance from a property expert. It was very much, we'd learn about property and we were doing business strategy and trying to combine the two ourselves.
Yes. So what did that look like?
Yeah.
So I guess maybe the first of all thing to just give an overview of what that strategy, we found this, really it was the person, we've spoken I think before about him, an amazing guy called Elliot Kay, who was a business coach, and he started working with us on strategy, and he had this one-page planning tool called Strategy on a Page, which a guy called Derry Llewellyn-Davis created, and it was fantastic. It was very visually appealing, A3 piece of paper. You've got vision, values, your purpose, which was like your service, opportunity, passion, market space, USP, and then it came over into the strategy, which split into 5 different areas, which was marketing, sales, operations, finance, and people.
Which I think that's a pretty standard business plan split, right?
Yeah. And then over long, medium, and short term, and then there was a numbers, like a KPIs section to it as well. And so we went through and filled all this out, and Oh gosh, it's so hard to remember what that was like. I remember it being incredibly wordy. It's like the whole idea of it is meant to be, it's like it's concise. You have to be really, one sentence or two per box, and we just wrote really small, and we finished to fit like a paragraph in each. Do you remember?
I do, yeah. Tiny words.
Tiny words. Go on.
What I would say is the first thing I remember is that at this point we were suddenly realised we've got to have a marketing strategy and a sales strategy, and yet both of those had two parts. And this was the initial realisation of how complex property is. And the reason it is so hard, because unlike a normal standard business that just has one lot of marketing and one lot of sales, we have two. We had to have an investor marketing strategy and a deal marketing strategy. We had to have an investor sales strategy and a deal sales strategy. And I think that moment, that's why we had so much to fit on the page as well. You're suddenly go, oh right, my God, we've got to fit two sides to this. And then you start to realise not only do you have two sides, but they have to join together, right? They have to actually combine and pull off at the same moment. Very hard, very complex, and that started our journey
towards all of that realisation.
Yeah.
I don't think the first time we wrote it all down we'd actually come to that level of clarity yet. I feel like there might have even been some other stuff that we were shoving in there with marketing and sales that it wouldn't be there now, and I can't think what that example would be. It might have been that we'd have had vendors in there as well.
You're splitting out the deals into multiple different routes.
Yeah, I don't think we just had that level of clarity at that point. So basically, you're right. This swirling vortex of just doing stuff, and for actually not even realising it was a business.
No.
That was an accident. And then going, actually, there's marketing and sales to do with this, and going, is there? No, I'm just looking for properties and for money. No, there's marketing and sales for this. And that then led to understanding what just a generic strategy would be across marketing and sales, and just that understanding was like a revelation, because at that point there was no marketing strategy, there was no sales strategy, it was just do stuff. Network, meet people, talk to people, meet agents, view properties, offer on properties,
do enough stuff and it will work is the concept, right?
Yeah.
Just throw enough it at the wall and
see what sticks,
and something will happen, it will pay off.
And you know what, it does work, the shit at the wall approach, but very inefficient. And we had simultaneously sat down in that conversation and gone, we want to go on holiday every 6 weeks, that's the vision. Suddenly you realise the shit at the wall approach to finding deals and investors, not that aligned when it comes to going on holiday and having a nice life, plus the fact that you're not just doing those two things, there's a whole other host of like actually operating the business and building the team and all that stuff. So you can't be inefficient, otherwise you will burn yourself out, and then the whole thing goes to pot anyway.
And I think at this moment we had a great realisation, and this was probably one of the most powerful results of going down that business strategy route, was to have someone with that knowledge from that side of a completely different industry, like the overall industry of business, sitting us down and saying, the end result you want, if you want to be able to step back from your business, which is what a standard business owner wants to do, if you want to be able to step back and have those holidays, have that freedom, have that time, and still be making loads of money from it, you need, and they literally laid out the long-term strategy in a very clear, concise way, which was like, oh my God, this is insanely powerful.
And I'm also not totally understanding it, but I feel like there's something really good here.
There's something amazing here, right? You're just listening to the words going, this. I mean, it seems weirdly vague but powerful. I want that, but I don't know why. And that, why don't you just, what is that? So
should we focus on this for marketing and sales, just for the purpose of this
yes.
one? So for the marketing one, it was like a marketing strategy that consistently attracts qualified leads without my constant involvement, something like that. Sales strategy was like a sales pipeline that consistently converts my ideal clients into great business.
Yeah. It sounds wishy-washy in some ways, but I have to say every single word of that has a load of work behind it and a massive amount of influence on the processes you choose to create. And what we realised was that if you miss out one of those words, or if you ignore one of those words, consistent, if you ignore consistent,
replicable, I don't think I said them.
If you ignore one of these words or forget about it, you won't build a process that actually relieves you from the business. You end up having to be involved. Right? But if you actually capture them all in your process, if you're like, oh right, is this consistent enough? No, why not? Improve it. Is this replicable enough? Is it? And you actually make them all work. Suddenly it's like, oh, I'm free.
And I think that's the clarity of like the long-term strategy for any great business is basically for marketing sales going to be a version of that. So kudos to Derry for that, because that was him that taught us that.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think it's like it has evolved and like tweaked, and we have put some of our own spin on it, but like the bones of that clarity was from there. And then you're like, why am I going networking? What's the purpose of it? And then suddenly it starts to be like, okay, so if am I networking for investors? Okay, so for networking investors, where would I choose to go? And so before I was just like haphazardly going to as many networking events as I could. Suddenly it's like, but which ones make the best sense? Or if I'm going to be networking to find deals, which ones make sense for that? And it just started to put everything through this like filter of what am I trying to achieve? But now at that point, we still were like, marketing was for marketing for deals and for investors, and sales was for deals and for investors, which kind of meant there's like 4 different things. Yeah. And so we went at it like that for quite some time. Good 2 or 3 years, I think.
Yeah, I think, and then we got to a point where we were really getting. It was getting into our bones. We were really getting to understand it and live it, and breathe this method. And we suddenly, when we were redoing our strategy at 1 year, realised that it was clunky. It was overly complex. And I think that was the moment at which we realised, for us in a property business, it's much simpler to make just an investor strategy all the way from marketing through to completion of sale, and an investor strategy. And that's just 2 things. A deal one and an investor one.
And they both encompass marketing and sales.
Yes.
And I think that, we're very good at going, how can I make this better? How can I make this better? How can I make this better? And I think that's where that has come from, and we've been using it ourselves. I was already using the business plan page to help create other strategies for other people's businesses. And so then you start to see the themes and where people may be struggling a bit, or it could be clearer. And I think I'm not sure if maybe I think it would take longer if it was just us by ourselves doing it. I think it would have taken longer, but the fact I was like seeing all these themes from these different people and being like, how can this be easier for them as well? It's just like becomes obvious.
And then I guess, could you just, I'll keep asking you, Jackie, because you are the property strategist. There's your title.
That is my
as far
title.
As I'm concerned. You are actually the one who's very, very good at this, like excellent at this area. So let's hear the expert.
I'll grill you on the next one that we're going to do together.
We'll talk around. So just, can you give us some idea about, like, in a marketing strategy, I think some of the key words that everyone understands, or I think hears and knows, the buzzwords are funnels, pipelines, right? And then similar in a sales strategy.
I would put pipeline in sales, not marketing.
There we go. This is it. This is why I'm asking the question. Give us a little overview. What would you call a good marketing funnel and a good sales pipeline? Like, how would that look?
So marketing is that process of attracting the right people, things to you. So it's like clarity about what you do, consistently having your message out there, being in the right places. Like that for me is like, what do I do, and how do I make sure the people who might be interested know about what I'm doing, and how do I help them to come towards me? That for me is marketing. And then sales begins from that moment that someone kind of comes towards me. Maybe some initial conversations still fit as part of marketing, but then very soon if someone's showing interest or a deal is fitting the right buttons, coming here to avatar and criteria, aren't we? Then you're into the sales process.
Great.
And the sales process is that, how do you take someone who is qualified, i.e. hits some certain criteria that you're looking for, all the way through to actually the deal completing or investor invests.
And in theory, both of those, the reason you have things called funnels and pipelines is because both of them have multiple phases, multiple stages. And from what you said before, marketing is a funnel, because it really is going out to everyone in the world, the very top of the funnel, which is very wide, and trying to kind of filter them down to just the ones who are hitting your criteria to be attracted to you, right? So you're starting from a massive amount of people and just trying to whittle it down to a small number of people, hence the funnel shape. And then you hit, as soon as someone shows the interest, they bite on the hook of whatever you've set of, like, this is, if you're interested in investing, they say yes. You're into your sales process. And at that point, you now have a pipeline, because you have one person who you are focused on, and you need to take them through multiple stages to go from just saying, I'm interested, to saying, yes, I'm investing and giving you your money. That's a pipeline with multiple stages.
Yes.
Right?
Good summary. Thank you.
Okay, good. So just I think it's just really interesting because most people wouldn't be thinking of it like this way.
Yes, which we weren't at first either.
What is an example marketing funnel in a property business? Just like a few stages, how would it look?
I think let's try and filter this through the lens of a particular person at a particular phase.
Great.
So I think if you are maybe like the similar position that we were in, like you've gone out there, you've done some deals yourself, and you're wanting to actually go out there and do the next round of deals, but you're still relatively early on. Like there's a lot of like that. It's all about relationships. And I think at that point, like networking, both within your existing network and within new networks, I think that alongside some kind of consistent messaging on social media and maybe a good website to go alongside it, I think if you can put those things in the mix, your social media is not necessarily going to attract new people, but like that is that continued awareness building piece that reminds people that you're there. And you're not going to have a big database of people at this point that you can do all like, emails and that kind of thing too. So it's about just building up the pool of potential people who you're talking to see who might be the right fit, and just throwing out enough and maybe you should talk about this, those like conversational hooks to just see who is actually looking for what you help people with. Did that answer your question?
It does. I guess what I'm interested in is we talk about a funnel, multi-phase funnel. What would the stages of
I don't think that a funnel in marketing is relevant to that person at that point.
Okay, so that's a later stage.
I think it's when you start to get more sophisticated in your marketing, but you do not need to be sophisticated at first. You just need to know what it is that you're actually doing and be able to clearly talk about it consistently to different people and keep saying the same thing over and over again to bring those people in. And I feel like that attraction part, doesn't mean you don't go out there and get your magnet closer to help the attraction, but that drawing towards a certain point in a conversation, but the sales pipeline is more important at that phase.
Great. So that brings us to the first sales pipeline, and I think this is really important distinction, is the moment at which someone says they have some interest in what you're talking about, now you're in sales.
Yep.
Now you can have a very straightforward process to getting someone through and whittling down anyone who actually isn't right through to someone investing. So can you give us an example of a sales pipeline?
So that could be like an initial, someone's like, you meet someone at an event and they're like, so you're looking for investors, like how does that work? High level discussion, do you want to know more about that? Let's have a discussion, because it's not really the environment here at this networking event. Just have a quick call. So quick initial conversation to find out more about the person, then to ask you some initial questions, just see if there's broadly synergy. If there still is, then in our process there'd be a more meaty conversation. We start to bring in some of the FCA stuff. We'll cover that another day.
Yep.
So more of an elongated consultation, more like an hour, and then off the back of that a bit more FCA due diligence, and then there's like more back and forward to share information about deals, questions, their specific questions that may come up, to get someone through to what we would call heads of terms. And there could be multiple things happening there, like emails back and forwards, phone calls, to get someone to heads of terms, which is then agreement in principle, essentially, to work together. And then you're getting that deal lined up to be able to present them the deal that you've agreed on the heads of terms, and then they should be saying yes after that point, because the heads of terms has outlined it. Anything you think I've missed?
No, that sounds great. And I guess what I would add to that is that from our perspective, when we set that up and set that out, it evolves over time, but in theory, it is exactly the same stages every time.
Yes.
As soon as someone has shown that interest, we have a set number of meeting points, of touch points, and it doesn't deviate much.
No,
right?
There might be some fluff around the edges,
yes.
But there's the waypoints.
There's the waypoints, and then you might have to do the occasional extra email or the extra conversation to cover something. But it really, and that comes in sales. Sales it's got a bad name as an industry in many ways, but in theory, it's about getting to know the other person, getting them to understand what you do, and having enough touch points to build trust between you.
Yep.
And you can't build trust in one or two, because that means you don't know each other well enough. And
yes.
So really it's a relationship building exercise.
On both sides.
On both sides.
And they are assessing you to see if you can help them achieve their objectives, and you're assessing them to go, am I appropriate for what they're looking for? Can I help this person to achieve their objectives? Like, are their expectations in line with what I can deliver? So it's like, it's on both sides. So it's not in either side's interest to rush it. And I agree, like, the sales does have a bad reaction to people, but it's not like I'm selling to you. It's like, I'm getting to know you. I'm trying to find out if I think I can help you. And if I can't, if I don't think you fit the qualification criteria for what's going to help me to get the best results for someone, I'm going to let you know that I'm not the right person, and I know a lot of other people in property, and I can suggest someone to you. And so it's nice. It's not like there's no high pressure sales convincing. It's just like getting to know people. It's a conversation.
Brilliant. And I'd like to, I guess we're coming towards the end, right?
Yep.
And all of this, what we've just described there, that from the moment we'd done our first 8 properties or whatever, and we'd done our business strategy beginnings, this was an evolution of the next 2 or 3 years of kind of realizations and workings out and sitting down and saying, right, what is our pipeline, and actually working it out, right?
Yes.
And then realizing something's not working and you're missing something because actually too many prospects, people coming through aren't flaking out, or they're not right, and you make tweaks and refinements until you get to a point where it's really comprehensive and working for you.
Yeah.
And that is a process.
Yes.
But
it still works along the way.
It still works.
It's just like a few more misfires and more time consuming. Yeah.
So we come to the most complex part of property, the part that everyone struggles with,
Deals
right?
and investors, put your hands together.
The chicken and the egg, right?
What comes first, Dave?
So everyone has a different opinion on this in so many ways, and I think...
But I'm going to say, I think that our opinion is the right opinion. Just going to put it out there.
So
my podcast, my opinion.
Great. Nicely played. So give us the Jackie Tomes property strategist approach to the chicken and egg.
So I think broadly, investors come first, but that doesn't mean you aren't doing both at the same time. And this is the hard part, like, you have to keep going on both. If you only focus on deals, but you're not also focusing on investors, you won't get it funded in time. If you're only focusing on investors, but not deals, you will get money agreed, maybe harder, but you will they'll lose interest by the time you've actually found a deal. So I think leaning more on the investor side, because I think people actually find it harder than the deal side. So starting to reach out to people, build relationships with clarity about what you're actually doing, and moving people through your pipeline process, because it takes time. The low-hanging fruit of people that you already know is quicker, but the people that you don't know yet is going to take a little bit longer to come through, generally.
To build that trust.
To build the trust. But while simultaneously you keep looking for deals, you are sourcing, you are talking to agents, you are viewings, you are maybe putting in some low offers that you don't think will be accepted to find out where you think the other side will stand. You cannot wait to have the money agreed to start looking for the deals. It's too late. You've effed it up. So you've got to do both at the same time. I guess I would say maybe getting the investors further down the pipeline, marginally further down the pipeline. You agree the investor before you get the firm agreement to do the deal.
Now, it can't be perfect like that, but in theory, the fact is you must be filling up a deal pipeline with prospective deals that could work.
That fit your criteria.
That you know that if you were to offer at the right amount and they accepted it, you'd definitely be able to do it and you're happy with that. But you're not necessarily getting them secured. But really, the investor comes first, because you don't secure the deal until the investor has said, I'm in, and basically...
On the basis of these numbers, I would want to work with you.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, the minute you have a deal agreed, but not an investor agreed, you are Mr. or Mrs. Desperate. And nobody wants to invest with someone that's desperate. It's like if you're trying to find a husband on the first date. You're like, please, I really want to get married. Just go on, propose right now, please. The person's going to run for the hills.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So true. And I think it gives you so much more enjoyment in the process, because the moment you have a deal agreed and you're scrabbling around to get an investor agreed, you might have loads of investors who have shown interest, but it's then the moment you're like, all right, I need to get them to agree to it. That's stressful.
It is.
And it's not enjoyable.
And if they haven't agreed already at that point and you put a deal in front of them, it's funny thing is, it's a big old tumbleweed, or money's just been invested elsewhere, or the deal doesn't quite fit my criteria. Like, if you haven't got people to a certain point through the relationship and the expectation setting, they're not ready, which is fair enough. You're not ready either, because you don't really know if you want them to invest with you either.
And we experienced that a lot, actually. This didn't come out of nowhere. We spent a long time doing the other way round and thinking that just because lots of people have said they're interested and they like what we're doing, that as soon as we put a deal to them, they'd say yes, or at least one of them would.
No.
But no, it's shocking, right?
Yeah.
And that was really what informed this. We went through that pain point and we got to the point of realising it has to go the other way around. Otherwise, you're just in hell. You're in business hell. And that's where this whole process came from, right?
And I think one thing I was going to go a little bit further from what you said is that, so it started with marketing and sales. We then realised it was deals and investors, but we still had alongside deals and investors, we had, I think we renamed it delivery, financial management and team. So we were still pushing on all of those fronts equally. And I think that's been the evolution of the last 3-ish years.
Yep.
Is suddenly going, my God, these are not of equal priority. And it's come from actually focusing on helping other people to do it, which is one of the great things about mentoring people too, is because you're always going, how can I help them to do it quicker and faster? And you kind of realise when people are going too slowly, and actually the prioritisation and being spread too thin is such a big theme for why people don't progress as quick. We could have progressed quicker if we had been clearer with our priorities. And that's been where we've kind of morphed from just being we help people with business strategy, and it's where our Dealmaker Accelerator program came from, because it was going, how can we get people to the most important result, which is to do more deals easier and quicker and raise finance just to make those deals happen. And that really shifted what strategy meant for us. And it's actually downranked the importance of a business plan for me in my mind, because I've realised, you can have the most beautiful plan, but it doesn't mean that you're going to actually do anything.
Yeah.
And if you're only focusing on your financial management strategy and you're not doing anything about deals and investors, your business is not going to grow, your cash flow is not going to grow, and there's no freaking point in any of this. So actually, to be able to go, these are the important things, as long as you've got the knowledge and understand that, it doesn't have to necessarily all be beautifully written down. Am I getting ranty again?
Yes, we've hit the Jackie rant. I'm so passionate about it. I love it.
Okay,
it's
thanks,
great.
babe. Passionate / very bossy.
But it's all very true, and I think that's the part that isn't said enough, and it's just this realization of where you put your time affects everything. So choosing wisely how and where you put your time, that's the key. That's the key to a successful business, a successful life, happiness, property lifestyle mastery. So every time you can get more and more clarity and nuance around how that works in a business, your life's going to be better.
Oh, I really do love recording those episodes with Dave. What a lovely thing to be able to do and reflect on. So I hope you enjoyed listening to that as much as we enjoyed recording it. We touched a lot on raising finance and the kind of the main lessons that we've had as part of that today. If you want to geek out on that more, we do run an event separately called the Raising Finance Formula, which you can check out at www.property-strategy.com/RFF. It's a half-day online event where we just go in detail on a lot of the areas that we touched on today, from investor pipeline, FCA regulation, how you structure deals with investors, and it's the real detailed approach is what we've had as our recent feedback from one of the events that we ran. So yeah, no fluff or high-level information, just the real detail behind from people who've actually been there and done it. So we'd love to see you on one of those events if you'd like to join us. So next week, I'm joined by another guest, Katrina Jones. If you don't know this lady, you definitely need to. A really amazing conversation from someone who's built multiple property companies, has exited one for a very substantial sum, and just that journey that she's been through, from overwhelmed and stressed to systemised, leveraged and free. And we specifically zero in on your comfort zone and how you move through it. Really amazing conversation this time next week. See you there.